One of the great traditions of harness racing is the trotting filly who can beat the colts. They don't come along every year, but when they do, it's a thrill for everyone. Fancy Crown, a 3-year-old daughter of the legendary stallion Speedy Crown, is a trotting filly who is faster than the colts of her generation. On October 5th at the Red Mile in Lexington, she outraced the all-male field in the elimination and the final of the Kentucky Futurity. It was just one of a string of impressive victories for Fancy Crown. She has equaled the fastest trot ever by filly or colt, 1:53 and 4. She's handled the shorter tracks too, trotting 1:57 and 1 in Delaware, Ohio. The second fastest time ever on a half-mile track, the fastest ever by a filly. Tonight, just outside of Washington, D.C., she could stake her claim to the title of Harness Horse of the Year when she faces a field of 7 other outstanding 3-year-old fillies in the trot for the Breeders' Crown. Welcome to Rosecroft Raceway in Fort Washington, Maryland. It's in a beautiful rural area of Maryland, but just 8 miles from Washington, D.C. Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Smith. This is the 6th event in our Breeders' Crown series, the 3-year-old filly trot. It's an event we've been waiting for since the very first day of our Breeders' Crown, because on that day at the Red Mile in Lexington, we had the privilege of seeing Fancy Crown devastate a field of colts in the Kentucky Futurity. In terms of pure speed, she is the fastest trotting filly of her generation, one of the fastest of all time, and it's always a privilege for anyone to see an athlete of such dominance or such importance, really, in any kind of sport, and it's always a privilege to see a horse perhaps on the verge of immortality. With us tonight is Kurt Green, who's the general manager of the Red Mile in Lexington. You've been able to see some of the great moments in Fancy Crown's life, and this is a special filly that we're talking about.
Yes, Sharon, Fancy Crown is, in my estimation, one of the 5 best fillies, maybe the best filly of all time. She has 2 really important world records. One is the 1:53 and 4 mile she turned in at Springfield, which is nearly 2 seconds faster than any female has ever trotted over that distance on a mile track. And her 1:57 and 1 mile at Delaware also ranks her among the best fillies of all time. The 3-year-old, the second fastest 3-year-old filly is at 1:59 and 1. And she's an amazing filly, has got an impressive string of victories, a world champion at 2. She's special.
There's one thing we've come to learn in this Breeders' Crown series is that there are no sure things in this series. All the races have been won by very good horses, no rank outsiders, but we've seen some odds-on favorites fail. In fact, some unbeaten horses. Remember Davidia Hanover in the 2-year-old filly trot at Mohawk. She broke stride just not very long after the start of the race. Now, she raced magnificently after that, making up a huge amount of ground to catch the field, but she was just unable to do it. She was there on the outside and could not make up all that much ground, so she was defeated by Conifer that night. So Conifer, a very good filly in her own right, was the winner, the unbeaten and odds-on Davidia Hanover, finishing 5th, ultimately placed 4th in this 2-year-old filly trot. And then, of course, remember Annihilator, the great 2-year-old who was unbeaten and the odds-on favorite going into the 2-year-old colt Pace. That one happened in the state of Pennsylvania, and the winner in the final there, after losing by a nose in the elimination, was Dragon's Lair, the local horse, who not only held off Annihilator, but Annihilator faded to 3rd. So Dragon's Lair, the winner of that one, the odds-on unbeaten Annihilator, was back in 3rd place. So there are upsets possible, and there's some very good fillies. Petroliana, Salino Labelle, a couple of fillies have actually finished in front of Fancy Crown.
Yes, Sharon, Petroliana comes into the race in really dead stroke. She's won the last 3 races, trotted a mile in 1:56 and 2 at Lexington. The question mark for her tonight is her form. She had some illness last week, and Lindstedt and the Wallers are very concerned about her condition tonight. The other filly in the race to be talked about is Salino Labelle, who has the outside post, head number 6, but post 8. But she has the services of John Campbell tonight.
We were also looking at the local filly, Moshannon Finesse, but she has been scratched because of a quarter crack. Anything else that's interesting in the field?
Well, I think of interest to most people would be the fact that Charlie Keller, who was the right fielder that played with Joe DiMaggio, they call him King Kong Keller. Charlie's into the breeding of harness horses, a lot of trotters. And he has a filly in the night, Maiden Yankee, who's got Bib Roberts in the sulky. A good filly. She's beaten some of these fillies before, and it adds a little local interest.
We also have another interesting event, the 5th race on the card from Rosecroft tonight. It's an invitational pace, some very good local horses and some good imports as well. Kenny Rice is trackside for us tonight, as he is each week, and he has Billy Perkins, who is the track announcer here, to talk about the 5th race, which you will see as well.
Thank you, Sharon. Billy, this shapes up to be a very exciting race. As we take a look, we have 5 local horses in it. Obviously, that generates a lot of local interest and a lot of local wagering here. And then you have some good horses coming in, plus you have Bill O'Donnell and you have John Campbell in this race.
That's true, Kenny. We're kind of proud of this race. It's a great warm-up for the Breeders' Crown. Probable favorite in the field, Deacon Lobel. He's coming off 2 wins in a row. The question there is, can he handle the half-mile racetrack? He's always raced on bigger ones. Another favorite in the field, our track record holder here last spring, GE's Romanero. He turned a mile in 1:55. I believe it's still a season's record. And also in the field, a 2-time Invitational winner this fall already from the John Hogan stable, Hillbilly Orr, and he leaves from the 2-post, which will be an advantage. Other horses in the field, Sticks and Scones, a newcomer with Bill O'Donnell, the top driver in the country, along with Duncan's Right, a hard-pounding pacer, Big Shift, Happy 7, and Lumbering Mel. We look for a lot of speed tonight.
And with the speed, with the fact that we have a beautiful afternoon for racing here, it has been a great day in Maryland, and the night is beautiful right now. Do you think we're going to have a pretty fast time and some indication of what kind of time we can expect in the Breeders?
Last week the race went 1:56.3. I can't see it going 56, 57, something like that. The Breeders' Crown, our track record is 2 minutes and a 5th on the trot. I can see that falling tonight.
I think most people do, don't you?
I believe so.
Okay, Billy, thank you very much. Look forward to your calls with us.
Thank you.
Sharon?
Thanks, Kenny, and we have a beautiful night of racing ahead here on ESPN. The Breeders' Crown on ESPN is brought to you by hard-working Chevy trucks. Nothing works like a Chevy truck. And by First Jersey Securities. Come grow with us. When we return, we'll take a look at the most successful sire in trotting history. 4 of the fillies are his. It's Speedy Crown. Welcome back to Rosecroft Raceway outside of Washington, D.C., where ahead we have an invitational pace and, of course, the Breeders' Crown race for 3-year-old filly trotters. 7 fillies in the race. 4 of them are daughters of the great Speedy Crown. In fact, 1 is a granddaughter of that wonderful stallion. He is in New York, and recently we paid a visit to this great stallion. Speedy Crown is now 16 years old, stands at Lano Lubell Farm in upstate New York. He was the winner of the 1971 Hambletonian and was a great racehorse, but it's as a sire that he's made his reputation. The leading trotting sire in Money Won and 2-minute performance for years now. 72 2-minute trotters last year, for example, 12 2-minute pacers as well. His offspring won more than $5 million last year, more than $6 million in 1982. These are staggering figures. He's a horse of superb conformation and gait, and that's certainly part of the reason, but there's also a little bit of mystery to why he's been so good. Here's Ted Andrews, who is the trainer of tonight's favorite, Fancy Crown.
We are hosting the Breeders' Crown.
I think Speedy Crown has been a dramatic influence in the trotting breed. He is by far the premium sire at this point in the industry.
What has made him so special in being able to pass these special qualities on to horses like Speedy Crown?
Well, it's hard to dictate just what what the horse does to bring on these qualities, but he just has that ability to produce better than himself, and he's done it so long. It's been terrific.
He's a great trotter himself, and he has a unique ability to pass it on. Probably hasn't been any, well, there's never been any trotting stallion that's as dominant in producing trotters as he is.
It's not as important, of course, but Speedy Crown is also a very handsome horse, and he's passed many of his good looks on to his very fast offspring. And one of his offspring, of course, is Fancy Crown, who will be the favorite in the Breeders' Crown race tonight. Here's Kenny Rice with her trainer.
I'm in the paddock area with Ted Andrews, and Ted, Fancy Crown coming into this race. This will be her first outing since the Kentucky Futurity back in early October at the Red Mile. Is this by choice? Was this the plan for Fancy Crown to come along at this slower rate, or you just haven't had any races you wanted to enter in?
Well, there were really nothing left for her to race in, and I thought about giving her a race here the week prior to the tonight, but decided that I'd just train her back and freshen her up that way.
Now, she hasn't raced a lot on a half-mile track coming into tonight this season. Does this bother you any, Ted?
No, each time. She's raced 3 times on a half-mile track, and each time that she's raced on, she's raced very well and has handled it well, and of course, set a world's record in Delaware, 57-1. So, you know, she's shown that she can handle the half-mile track.
Are you worried about traffic, though, maybe because she is outside there?
Well, the post position is the biggest concern because there'll be a lot of traffic inside, and we're just going to have to wait and see how the race unfolds.
I would imagine you would expect Bill O'Donnell to try to get out as fast as you can. You expect an early first quarter that's going to be real fast?
I won't presuppose what Billy might do. He'll watch what's happening inside of him and then make his decision.
How about the time overall? What is it, 2 minutes and change here, the track record? Do you think that's going to fall tonight?
I would expect it would fall, yes. I don't think it'll hold up 2 minutes in the fifth.
How's Fancy Crown like this layoff?
She's trained very well over it, and I'm very pleased with how she's trained. I've trained her twice over it, so she has handled the track very well.
Good luck tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted Andrews, the trainer of Fancy Crown. That's the favorite for tonight's race.
And thank you, Kenny. And, of course, the fifth race is just ahead, the Breeders' Crown race, the sixth race. The favorite so far, Deacon Lobel. And, Kurt, nice-looking horse, huh?
Yes, Deacon Lobel comes into this race really in top form, and John Campbell's in the sulky.
And we'll be back with more. We are going to take a short time out, then be back with the fifth race, and, of course, still waiting for the sixth, the Breeders' Crown race. All of that still ahead on ESPN. Welcome back to Rosecroft Raceway. I'm Sharon Smith along with Kurt Green and Kenny Rice. It's a fast track at Rosecroft, a warm 71 degrees. The wind is certainly moderate and beautiful racing conditions tonight near Washington. The fifth race just a couple of minutes ahead right now, and a good field of invitational pacers whom we are about to see. And including one pacing filly who's mostly concentrated in New York, Bill O'Donnell, great driver, and Sticks and Scones. We'll run through quickly the field for you, talk about them a little bit more later. Hillbilly or John Hogan, the driver. G's Romanero with Gary Ewing, a lot of local support going to this horse. The number 4 horse is Deacon Lobel, and this is a major winner, nearly $300,000 in his career. Duncan's Right also in the field. He's also won $300,000 in his life. He is a mature horse. He's a 6-year-old. Big Shift also in the field. Happy 7, Lumbering Mel with a late driver change, Wayne Truitt coming in to drive this horse. Now, Kurt, let us talk about a couple of these horses. We have some really very, very good pacers here, including the number 2 horse who is hiding behind the number 1. This is Hillbilly Orr hiding there behind Sticks and Scones.
Yes, Hillbilly Orr comes into the race with 3 wins in his last 4 starts. He had the 8-hole in his last start here and just couldn't get anywhere. Had 12 lengths to make up from the half, but still paced a mile in 58. He was a winner here, three of those last 4 starts, and one of the fastest one there in 57-2.
So he certainly is leading contender, and obviously is a horse that knows this track. Now, the horse that's the favorite in the race is Deacon Lobel, and if there's any question about him, it would be that he's not all that familiar with this track, and we'll have to see how he handles it. Is that usually a problem for a horse? This is an experienced racehorse, though.
Yes, for Deacon Lobel has the services of John Campbell tonight. He's trained by Joe Caraluzzi. Deacon has won these last 2 starts, one in 57-1 at the Meadows and in 156-2 at Liberty Bell. Both of those are 5/8 mile tracks. He shows no half-mile track form, but he's a veteran pacer. I'm sure he must have performed admirably on a half-mile track before. 11 wins this year already for this good son of Nansemond.
Well, this is a good field as well. And of course, we mentioned earlier Sticks and Scones, Bill O'Donnell driving her. This is a filly coming out of New York. That's where she primarily races, although she has traveled a little bit. We're seeing a pacing filly, and of course we'll be seeing trotting fillies later. We talked a little bit earlier about Fancy Crown beating the colts. Pacing fillies, you don't see that all that much often. I don't think Deacon Lobel there was all that scared of this attractive filly here. But does she have a chance?
I think Sticks and Scones will get the first call. She's a great post filly, and she gets right out of the gate, and there's no shocker about who will be on top going to the corner.
Well, she certainly would get support if she was in New York, because she's very popular around Roosevelt and Yonkers. Okay, here are the current odds. Sticks and Scones at 7-1, but then again, it is a big task for a pacing filly to face the colts. Hillbilly or 5-2. A lot of people like him. We see Deacon Lobel at 8-5. First time in a while on this track. That might be kind of short odds on him. What do you think?
I think G's Romanero, who's the speed horse in the race from the 3-hole, he went to the half in 55-3 off of the rail last week, but he's in the 3-hole this week. If he can swing down there in a little more moderate time, he's the speed horse by Nero. His speed might hold up this evening.
Well, he's a good-looking horse too. Looks like a good muscular front quarters on this horse.
Yes, he warmed up exceptionally well, and I think if he's not too stout going out of there, and he can, you know, restrain him and not make him go too much, he'll be a tough horse to beat in this field.
Well, the horses are starting to line up behind the gate, so we are approaching the start of this race. Remember, this is the 5th race, an invitational pace, $15,000, mostly colts and geldings. Also one filly. They'll have to go around twice. Remember, it's a half-mile track, and they are getting behind the gate. And they are lining up. Billy Perkins is the track announcer. Let's go to Billy right now.
Well, thank you, Sharon. All horses look like they're going to be on the gate as we get underway. It's a beautiful night here in Fort Washington, Maryland. 71 degrees out. Sticks and Stones, the favorite in the field here, Deacon Lobel with John Campbell. We're ready to go. And there it go, driving out for the lead. G.E.'s Romanero in the middle of the racetrack to challenge. Sticks and Stones down along the rail, going to keep him out there for a while. Up on the outside, Deacon Lobel now comes on 3rd. Hillbilly Orr down along the rail in 4th. Duncan's right to get away 5th. Big Shift comes on 6th. Happy 7 racing 7th. The early trailer, Lumbering Mel. Take him down the back lane. G.E.'s Romanero, 27 and 4/5. They'll swing into the paddock turn the first time. It's G.E.'s Romanero to cut it out. He's got about 2 on Sticks and Stones, 2nd by 4. Deacon Lobel comes on 3rd. Hillbilly Orr racing 4th. Then it's Duncan's right in 5th. Big Shift, Happy 7 and Lumbering Mount in front of the grandstand. They'll roll down to the halfway mark. G.E.'s Romanero, the half goes 56 and 3/5. The clubhouse turn the second time. G.E.'s Romanero. The Garden Trip to Sticks and Stones in 2nd. Now it's harder 3rd. It's Deacon Lobel. He's underway. Hillbilly Orr to close on him 4th. Duncan's right in 5th. Along the rail, Big Shift. Happy 7 to the outside. Lumbering Mel begins his campaign. The field tightens. They drive to the 3/4 mark. Sticks and Stones. Bill O'Donnell on the outside to take over the lead. 1:26 and 3/5. A quarter of a mile to go. It's Sticks and Stones to show in front. Deacon Lobel ready to challenge 2nd. Hillbilly Orr 3rd. Here comes Duncan's right now 4th. Happy 7th, 5th. Lumbering Mel to close on the field. They turn for the finish mark. Pacing through the lane. Sticks and Stones on top of the length. Now Hillbilly Orr comes on strong in the middle. Sticks and Stones on the outside. Hillbilly Orr.
Well, look at the time, 55 and 4 by these good pacers. G.E.'s Romanero, well, he made the pace a little too much pace.
Well, again, he showed, you know, that brutal speed in the first half, and he was really unpressured for it. He also tired badly over there by the 3/4 mile mark, but a really good trip for Hillbilly Orr to come up on the outside. He got to follow Deacon Lobel, and in the stretch really fired coming off the last corner, and blew by Sticks and Stones, who win a really creditable race.
Well, Sticks and Stones raced superbly, and of course Bill O'Donnell had her there tucked in just in the position to take over when the 3-horse tired. She just didn't have enough, no matter how hard O'Donnell tried to give her everything he could, but couldn't quite hold him off.
She just can't hold off this horse's rush. I mean, he makes a really strong finishing late move here, and is a solid 2.5 length winner and going away at the end of it.
On the other hand, she did beat Deacon Lobel, everybody's favorite here, so a good race by her. A good race, in fact, by the top 3 horses. Not so good by G.E.'s Romanero, who went a little too fast too soon.
Yeah, it's only 4/5 of a second off of G.E.'s Romanero's own track record. And a really creditable mile this late in the season here, when obviously we don't get the heat and humidity that you get in the summertime.
Well, it also augurs well for a pretty fast time in our 3-year-old filly Trot coming up, I would think.
I think the track record, which is only 2 minutes and a 5th, will fall tonight by huge chunks.
I think what we also noticed in this race, which we can sort of look forward to the next race, it's very, very tough on those horses on the outside. We're looking at horses in the first 4 post positions here involved in all the running of this race. And there he goes.
Yeah, he's just going away at the end. I mean, John Hogan just gives him a little tap right there at the wire to keep him going, but he made a very impressive move off the corner.
And a good performance by this very good 5-year-old pacer. He is a Keystone Orr stallion. and bred in Kentucky at Stoner Creek Stud in Kentucky. And there is the winner, probably happy to win on a night like this. That's
this is a new record for him. His previous best was 157.2 here. As we said, the last start he had at the 8-hole and got way out of the race, but still closed a lot of ground, and obviously had a much better trip here tonight.
There's a lot of considerations that go into picking the horses you're going to follow in races like this one, and of course in the next race. Size of the track, all sorts of conditions. Here's Kenny Rice, who is trackside, to talk about handicapping these races.
One of the sure things here tonight at Rosecroft, before people lay down their $2, you're going to take a final look and see about the morning line. See who the handicapper thought was favored. And they're also going to take a look at this man and see who he likes. Tom Barry. Now, you do not set the morning line here, Tom, but you also have a column that is included in the program. So, in a sense, you're handicapping the race.
That's right. It's called Hub Rail Comments. I use basic half-mile track handicapping techniques, post position, class, and of course the current sharpness, current form of the horse I look into quite closely. I make these comments. What I'm doing with a prediction, I'm giving a reason why I'm picking that horse or a reason why I'm not picking that horse.
Now, Tom, you said exclusively here for Rosecroft setting the handicapping. How does this differ when a 5/8 winner comes in, a 1-mile winner? How do you use the intangibles coming off that race to set up the race for a half-mile?
I take a look at a horse on a big track, 3 turns on a 5/8 track, 2 turns on a mile track. If a horse is making breaks up there, I'll kind of stay away from them. You know, when they hit the 4 turns, sharper turns, a half-mile track, there's a good chance they might make a break again. The kind of horse I like coming off a big track's a front-ender that maybe has been lasting, you know, most of the way. Top of the stretch on a mile track, and then it gets beat coming down the stretch. Well, here, half-mile track, sharper turns and whatnot, he might get a little braver on his first start.
And certainly it's going to be interesting tonight to see how these Breeders' Crown fillies like it. Who do you like in the Breeders' Crown?
I got to go with Fancy Crown. She showed a ton of gate speed at Delaware. She was down a quarter in 27.2. I think that could be the difference. I think she might just shoot right on to the top, not look back.
Thank you very much, Tom Barry. I know a lot of people are going to be getting your comments to see who you like in the Breeders' Crown, which is Fancy Crown.
Thanks, Kenny. And the 5th race is now official. The winner, Hillbilly Orr, he paid $744 and $320 to win. Sticks and Scones finishing 2nd. She paid $6 and $360. In 3rd place, Deacon Lobel, $280 to show. 1:55.4 fast time. We'll be back with more in a minute. At Rosecroft, where the next race is the Breeders' Crown race for 3-year-old filly trotters. And of course, a lot of the attention going to Fancy Crown. Among the reasons is that she is a contender for Horse of the Year. Fancy Crown, with her impressive performances over the summer, becomes a leading contender. A lot of people are supporting this filly in the voting for Harness Horse of the Year honors. Now, Fancy Crown, she won the Hambletonian Oaks in impressive style in the final over a couple of outstanding fillies. Consequently, she perhaps moved to the front of her pack with that. And, of course, the Kentucky Futurity gave her most of the attention in the category of potential Harness Horse of the Year, and a lot of her people think that she is the horse to beat.
I do think about the Horse of the Year honors because she has done so much and has been so great for the whole season that I think that she deserves it. I really do.
Well, she probably has to win a race to do it, because we thought earlier that perhaps Annihilator was going to be Harness Horse of the Year. Of course, his Woodrow Wilson victory was stunning. He raced superbly at the Red Mile in Lexington, but lost to Dragon's Lair in the Breeders' Crown race. So he has got a tough row to hoe. How about his chances?
Well, I think, you know, if you're judging like a Horse of the Year, you judge the horse that, you know, did it when he was supposed to, like for the big money. And you know, when the big money's up, that's when all the best bunch of horses are around. And a horse like Annihilator, he did that.
Well, Kurt, how about Mr. Dalray, an aged pacer? For a while, we thought he might be the Harness Horse of the Year.
Well, obviously, he's the best aged pacer in North America. He's had a really good run from this race at the Meadowlands on the Hambletonian Day right through the rest of the year. But I think he'd be a long shot at this point for Horse of the Year honor.
He did lose a couple of races in Canada and in Chicago that perhaps he wasn't supposed to lose. On the road again, we thought he was out after losing the Breeders' Crown race, but then he came back and took a chunk off the Roosevelt track record, so maybe he's a contender again.
Well, I think a lot depends on what happens here tonight. I think if Fancy Crown should, for some reason, drop this race tonight, I think the whole thing could be thrown up for grabs, and we could have the some of the closest balloting for Horse of the Year that we've had in a long time.
Who actually has a vote?
The Horse of the Year is chosen by the United States Harness Riders Association, much like in baseball where the riders make the choices. It's a nationwide balloting involving lots of harness riders from all parts of the country. And a lot of weight goes to money won, big races won, world record achievements. And, you know, you look at On the Road again, he's won $1.6 million this year. Annihilator's won $1.2 million, and Fancy Crown has the record.
Well, we will have to see how the harness riders do it. And of course, the fans are waiting for the Breeders' Crown and early odds, while Fancy Crown odds on at 4 to 5 at this point in the wagering. We're going to take a short time out and then be back with more. Welcome back to Rosecroft Raceway. We're about 8 miles outside of Washington, D.C. You wouldn't believe it from the beautiful rural area. I'm Sharon Smith along with Kurt Green and Kenny Rice. Well, the purse for this 3-year-old filly topped $365,000, $182,000 first money, $91,000 for second, $43,000 plus for third. They even pay off for fifth, $18,250. We're about 10 minutes away from post time for this very rich and very important race. As we've discussed, it could certainly have a big bearing on Harness Horse of the Year honors, and perhaps as well on the divisional championship, although Fancy Crown certainly has to be the leading contender. Time for us now to take a look at the field. And here is one of the fillies that has to be given a chance. She has beaten Fancy Crown. This is Petroliana. And Kurt, you in fact saw her beat Fancy Crown in a race recently.
Yes, and in the other race that she didn't beat her, she closed 5 lengths on Fancy Crown from the head of the stretch. So that was at Lexington. Her recent form is terrific. Again, the only question mark is whether she can handle the half-mile track. She has 8 wins this year, but only one of those wins is on a half-mile track, and that was on an off-track at Saratoga.
And she, in fact, the first 3 fillies that we'll see are part of an entry. They are trained by Jan Janssen, owned by, well, there's a slightly different ownership on them, but Petroliana owned by Castleton Farm and Ulf Moberg of Sweden. Number 1A is Headhunter, is her stablemate, also trained by Jan Janssen. Håkan Wallner, the driver of this one. This one owned by Hanley Dawson and Ulf Moberg of Sweden. And, you know, a lot of people are giving this filly support as well, although her recent form is not as impressive as her stablemate.
Yeah, Headhunter has good gate speed. She's a filly that's won $137,000 this year, and she has 3 wins, one of those in a big stake in Canada. She has good gate speed and good manners, and I think she'll be a contending filly in the early part of this race.
And that is number 1A, Headhunter. The other member of this 3-horse entry is Harmony Lobel. This is 1B, Jan Janssen, the driver and trainer of this one, also owned by Castleton and Moberg. And this filly, too, getting some support as part of a very strong entry.
Yeah, you know, it's difficult with being coupled with Petroliana and Headhunter and Harmony Lobel. Obviously, the patron's getting 3 for 1 here, and he thinks that that's a pretty good selection. The entry is now currently 8 to 5. Harmony Lobel is probably the weakest of the 3 fillies in the entry, but she's won $102,000 and almost a $250,000 lifetime.
Well, let's look at the number 2 horse. This one slightly longer odds, although getting certainly some local support. This is Maiden Yankee. Now, Charlie Keller is racing this filly. Bib Roberts, a trainer and driver here, and probably a lot of local people, a lot of Maryland people would love to see this filly win.
Well, yes, there's another daughter of Speedy Crown from a Noble Victory mare, so she has a pedigree just like Fancy Crown.
And the number 3 horse in the field, we will see her momentarily. As we look at Maiden Yankee, this is Neville Amanda. Per Erickson is driving this horse, also the trainer of this horse. She is owned by Hans Engrund of Pennsylvania, and this filly 35 to 1, although they were willing to pay the entry fee to get her here.
She's a definite outsider in the race. A well-bred filly by Greenspeed from Floral Princess. She's a half-sister to a real good horse named Neville Impulse.
The number 4 horse not in the field, we mentioned Moshannon Finesse, suffered a quarter crack warming up. Here is the big horse. The number 5 horse here is Fancy Crown, owned by the Fancy Crown stable. She was a homebred. Bill O'Donnell, the leading driver in the country, is her driver. Ted Andrews, whom we've seen, the top trainer, is her trainer. Boy, she's getting the support she deserves. 4 to 5 right now.
Yeah, Fancy Crown looks the part. She's got 11 wins in 19 starts, world records on a mile and 5/8 or half-mile tracks. They plan to go to Florida later this month and go after or in the first part of next month, and go after the 5/8 mile mark with a 2 to round out her world record slate.
No, she probably hopes she adds to it tonight, or at least doesn't lose her world record on this size track. So that is Fancy Crown, the favorite. Number 6 now is Selena Lobel. Her current odds around 4-1. She opened fairly long. Now, John Campbell, the driver here, Joe Carolucci is the trainer, Reddington Stable, Robert Delaney, Gerald Batt, the owners. This filly looked a little stiff warming up, and you know, she still looks a little stiff. Maybe this is just the way she is.
Yeah, she has always looked that way, and I think she was probably warm out of that. John Campbell's driving this filly tonight because, unfortunately, Mickey McNichol, who's a regular driver, his mother passed away this week, and Mickey's unable to be with us tonight. And, of course, all of us in racing extend our sympathy to Mickey and his family.
Yes, it's certainly a pity, and this is a good filly. Okay, we have seen the fillies entered now in this race. 7 fillies now racing rather than the 8. Half-mile track, some of these fillies familiar with the shorter track, others are not, and there's certainly a lot of strategy involved in racing on a track of this size. Kenny Rice has been sampling the opinion of the drivers and trainers involving this half-mile track and what they will do in terms of their post position and the size of the track. So let's go to Kenny right now. Well, we will go to Kenny in just a moment. The half-mile track is shorter than many of these fillies normally race, so there is some strategy involved, especially when a couple of the favorites are on the outside. We will talk about that a little bit later on. We're going to take a short time out, however, and be back with more, including the discussion of the short track and the race itself after a short time out. Back at Rosecroft Raceway near Washington, where the fans are placing their bets pretty much according to what we might have expected. Fancy Crown, the favorite. She is odds on. She's been odds on. Now she's shortened a little bit at 1-2. The entry at 2-1, and Selena Lobel, the other horse, getting a lot of support, 9-2. Well, the fans are working on their strategy in terms of bets. The drivers and trainers thinking about the strategy in terms of racing. Here's Kenny Rice with a report.
It has been said that positioning is everything for the driver in harness racing, especially on a half-mile track, and in particular at the start of the race. How fast the horse gets away from the gate is very important, especially with an outside post position. Drivers have already set up the strategy in their mind. They usually know about an 1/8 or to a 1/4 mile in the race whether or not they will be able to execute that strategy. It is very important, especially if they have a horse on the outside, to get off to a good start.
Well, you know, the outside post, that's going to hurt her, you know, going into the race. I don't know how it'll end up, but, you know, Ted says she's real sharp, and, you know, if she's as good as she was in Kentucky, she'll be all right.
It's very important, especially with these good horses, you know, because it's very tough to come from behind when you have these class horses to race with. So it's very important to get away, get a good position, you know, to be up there among the 3 first horses, you know.
It's always very important to get, especially on the half-mile track, to get very fast behind the gate. But my filly is not so fast, so I have to wait a little bit.
Every step is important on a half-mile track because every second is important on a half-mile track. It is estimated that 1/5 of a second is equal to 1 length. So if you get off to a bad start, you follow second behind, that is 5 lengths behind. And at the end, that can be the difference between winning or being out of the money.
And thank you very much, Kenny. Kurt, the outside position a little dangerous for Fancy Crown Selena Lobel?
Well, I think the race will be made going to the quarter. I think if Fancy Crown, if O'Donnell decides to just go out of there and go and charge for the top and be very aggressive, and she has the capability to trot a very fast quarter at Delaware in her world record mile. She was down to the quarter in 27 2/5. So she has exceptional gate speed, and I think the race really will be decided then. Selena Lobel, who's outside of her in what is the 7-hole now, since she moves in because of the scratch, still isn't going to help her too much, and she's got a very, very tough time, because if Fancy Crown does get to the lead, she likes being on the lead. 7 of her 11 wins this year have been on the lead, and if she gets it, she's very, very, very reticent to give it up.
Well, we are going to see less than 1 minute to post time right now. The fillies are getting a little bit closer to the gate. We are going to take a short time out, and we will be back in time for the start of the 6th race on the card. More importantly, the 3-year-old filly Trot of our Breeders' Crown Series. Back in a minute. Back to Rosecroft, where the Breeders' Crown race for 3-year-old filly Trot is just moments away. Of course, a lot of eyes will be on Fancy Crown, the odds-on favorite in the race. A lot of eyes as well on the 3-horse entry. 3 pretty good fillies, and among them, 1B Harmony Lobel. Trainer Jan Janssen chose to drive this filly himself, and although The strategy they can use is limited. The rules of racing require that each horse race for itself, but it is an entry. Jan Janssen commented to Kenny Rice about his plans for the race.
She's a top filly, one of the top fillies in the country right now, and she has, on the mile track, she's been very good. She beat Fancy Crown twice the last two starts, and she has also won on the half mile, but she's a strong filly and she can go a long way, but the turns, the half mile will bother her. She's not that good around the turns.
Well, Kurt, what do you think? This filly have a chance, or are your eyes on Fancy Crown as well?
Well, I think that Harmony Nobel is obviously an outsider in the race. Again, the race will be made going to the quarter and deciding what Bill O'Donnell decides to do with Fancy Crown coming off the gate, and then what Campbell decides to do, whether he's really got to stay close to him and not let Fancy Crown get away driving Selena Lobel.
And Kenny Rice standing by. Kenny, some final comments from you?
This may be the time, Sharon, that the favorite goes on and wins. They've kind of been pointing her to this after DuQuoin, some tough races. She goes to the Red Mile. Since then, she's had some rest. They pointed her to it. She looks good. I think this is the night of Fancy Crown.
Well, the fillies are lining up now for the Breeders' Crown race. 3-year-old filly Trotters. Fancy Crown will be going off at 1-2. They are lining up behind the gate. We will momentarily take it to Billy Perkins, who will have the call. Let's go to Billy.
Second. Fancy Crown underway on the outside third. They'll swing around the turn. That's Maiden Yankee getting away fourth. Selena Lobel the outside fifth. Down along the rail, Headhunter comes on in sixth. The early trailer as they move down the back lane now, Neverly Amanda. On the outside to move up and show in front, Fancy Crown takes command of the field the first quarter, 29 and 4/5. They're in the paddock turn the first time. It's Fancy Crown and Bill O'Donnell on top by a length and a half. And trotting second, it's Headhunter. Coming on third, Petroliana. The outside fourth, Selena Lobel goes the long mile. Maiden Yankee fifth down along the rail. Off the turn in front of the grandstand, they'll drive to the halfway mark. It's all Fancy Crown in command of this field as they come to the lane. Headhunter is second, a half and a minute and 3. Up on the outside, Selena Lobel moves up. They'll swing into that turn. Petroliana is fourth. Now beginning to move on the field on the outside is Headhunter to be fifth. They move off the turn the back lane. Maiden Yankee running down that back stretch. Fancy Crown the race leader. Here comes Selena Lobel to challenge for that lead. They head down the back lane. Headhunter in third. The outside, Harmony Lobel fourth. Petroliana fifth on the rail. Maiden Yankee right there. 3/4, 1:30 and 4/5. Neverly Amanda trails. Fancy Crown in command of it. Selena Lobel comes on second. Hanging game, Headhunter third at the rail. The outside, Harmony Lobel fourth. Petroliana nowhere to go. They turn for the finish mark. Fancy Crown in command of it opens up 3-4. It's track record time through the lane. It's Fancy Crown.
Well, undoubtedly we have seen our 3-year-old trotting filly of the year. That's got to be about the surest thing in the sport, and very possibly our harness horse of the year. Track record, she took almost a second off the track record and didn't have to struggle at all.
Yes, this was really a pretty easy race for O'Donnell. Did what we thought he would do. He got out, got control of the race. Selena Lobel was parked the whole mile, then had to try and attack first over going up the backstretch. And once they got by the 3/4, O'Donnell just buried the peg and opened up and was the easiest kind of winner. This is an awesome performance. This filly's got a terrific career behind her now. And now it's on to Pompano for the world record there.
She certainly looks like she's healthy, sound, and very cheerful filly. Now, the key move, obviously, was that successful start. I mean, Bill O'Donnell made it obvious right as soon as the gate folded what he was going to do. And in fact, he had her nose right on the gate. He was all set.
Yes, and Headhunter's the only one of the entry on the inside that comes out to challenge. She's the only one really that has the gate speed. O'Donnell just sort of sits and swings on her going around the turn here until they get to the backstretch, and then see, he's got a hole here. He could really kind of try and squeeze into that hole, but he wants no part of that, and he just drove her right on.
Well, I think he probably knew he had the strongest filly and wasn't going to waste any time tucking in. Well, you can see that O'Donnell's watching closely how these fillies have done, and I think he knows at this point that he's got the filly here. Yeah, he's going around the final turn.
This is where he buries the peg, and he reaches over and hits the wheel one time, and she's the picture of power and perfection coming off this last turn. She's just motoring away from this field, and if you want a study in trotting poetry, that's it right there.
Look at the way those legs are folded up, exactly what a horse is supposed to do, and she does everything she's supposed to do, including win. Well, we are going to take a short time out, and she doesn't even look like she worked very hard. We are going to take a break, then we'll be back with more from Rosecroft Raceway. The 3-year-old filly Trot is official. Fancy Crown the winner. $3, pretty generous to win on a filly like that. $2.10 to place, $2.10 to show. Petroliana was second, $2.20 and $2.10. Selena Lobel $2.10. Headhunter fourth, and Maiden Yankee finishing fifth. Well, the folks here saw a great champion horse and saw the best driver in the country right now win it. Here's Kenny Rice in the winner's circle.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Congratulations, Bill O'Donnell, your first driver to pull a double with Troublemaker and now tonight Fancy Crown in this series. And we talked earlier about the importance of getting out of the starting gate quickly. You did. In the first quarter of things, you had everything set up. Let's take a look at the way the race was progressing.
Yeah, well, you know, there was a horse scratched inside of me, and, you know, with the 6-hole, and she races well up and handy to the front. So, you know, just one horse left, so I thought I'd take a little run and try to get to the front, and it worked out well.
As we see right here, no surprises in you going out to the lead early. You said you were going to try to do that and set the pace.
Right, yeah. She races well up handy to the front, and she's good and handy and good gated, so, you know, being on the front of a half-mile track's a big edge.
And she was good gated all the way tonight.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Yeah, that was my fault down in Kentucky.
That's an impressive race tonight.
Well, she was really good. You know, Ted's done a heck of a job with her all year to keep her good. She's taken spells where, you know, she'd get a little off, and, you know, he nurses her back every time. And, you know, she has a race in 3.5 weeks, and, you know, she was as good tonight as she ever was.
Congratulations. She turns it in 29 some change there and goes on to win it. And congratulations to you also. This has been a big week for Bill O'Donnell and his family on the birth of Christopher William yesterday, 8-pound boy.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much. I'd like to say hello to my wife, Barbara. She's in the hospital. She's watching us tonight with our son, and, you know, she's healing up and getting better.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bill O'Donnell, who has pulled the double, winning with Troublemaker earlier in this Breeders' Crown Series. Tonight he wins with Fancy Crown, setting a crack record in the process. Sharon?
Thank you, Kenny. So double congratulations to Bill O'Donnell, a big win and a brand new son. So a good night for the O'Donnell family, and certainly a good night for the beautiful filly, Fancy Crown. And Bill O'Donnell knows he hasn't won at this point.
And welcome back to Rosecroft. Ted Andrews, the winning trainer tonight of Fancy Crown. Ted, you said you've been bringing her along a little slower, getting her ready for this race, letting her rest up a little bit since the Kentucky Futurity. She certainly looks strong tonight.
Well, she was terrific tonight, and I was really tickled with her performance. And, you know, after you're off 3 weeks, you get a little apprehensive about whether you've trained her enough or trained her too much, or just how, you know, how she's going to react after that layoff. But she was very good. I was pleased.
Obviously, she is the fastest filly. Is she one of the better fillies of all times? How would you rank her?
Well, from what I know of the other fillies, I think she's the best filly that's ever, a 3-year-old filly certainly that's ever been on a racetrack.
Is she the horse of the year?
I sure hope so. This should convince somebody.
What is ahead now for Fancy Crown this season, Ted? Will you be back on the track with her?
Well, we have to decide. There may be one other race for her, possibly. If we can get a race for her within the next couple of weeks on a 5/8 mile track, we may take that and see how we do.
Maybe more interesting right now as a 4-year-old, and you look ahead to the Breeders' Crown, which will have divisions next year for aged trotters and aged pacers. Maybe looking for Fancy Crown coming back next year as a 4-year-old?
Well, she may be there. We haven't decided yet.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Thank you. Ken.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ted Andrews, the trainer of the winner tonight, Fancy Crown. We have the 1-2 favorite winning in the Breeders' Crown Series. Sharon?
Well, Kenny, of course, all racing fans hope that she'll be back next year, but I think a lot of people would like to see a foal out of her as well. Let's hope the racing fans win if there's a battle between them. So, wonderful victory by Fancy Crown, and she wins the bulk of the purse, but all first 5 finishers do win money as well. In second place was Petoliana, third place Selena Lobel. Form certainly held in the first 3 places, Headhunter 4th, and Maiden Yankee was 5th. And Kurt, it's always a treat to see a great horse win a race.
Well, and she did so in such commanding fashion. She got control of the race, dominated the pace. O'Donnell was able to relax her down to an easy half in 1 minute and 3/5. And then, for all intents and purposes, the race was over at that point because when Selena did attack a little bit over on the backstretch, O'Donnell just gave her a head, and she trotted away from the field.
Well, we saw a world champion tonight. In our next Breeders' Crown race, we're going to see a whole bunch of world champions. It's a 3-year-old filly pace, and it takes place at Liberty Bell near Philadelphia, and quite a field in that race.
Yes, that's next Friday, and there are 4 world champion fillies in that race. Naughty But Nice, Hit Parade, Don't Dally, and Mylin Hanover, who have all been world champions at one time or another. There's 10 fillies in the race. Naughty But Nice drew the rail. Hit Parade has the 2-hole. It should be a ding-dong battle. Those fillies will rattle right out of there.
And Naughty But Nice is a magnificent filly. She won the Little Brown Jugette, and in her most recent race, she lost, but she was the horse that pushed on the road again to his good track record at Roosevelt. So Naughty But Nice probably is going to be the favorite in the race, but with 4 world champions, what can you say about that? Great race coming up next Friday here on ESPN. And we look at Fancy Crown, the winner of this race, and we will say goodbye to all of you from Rosecroft. Goodbye to Fancy Crown as well. We've enjoyed being with you. The Breeders' Crown on ESPN has been brought to you by hardworking Chevy trucks. Nothing works like a Chevy truck. And by First Jersey Securities. Come grow with us. And by U.S. Air, the airline that offers over 1,000 flights every business day to more than 90 cities across the USA and Canada.